Hello viewers, this is Wolf here. Welcome to Wolf's Haven and to another model review. Today we're going to be taking a look at this insane 1/10 scale Rathalos diorama designed by Kinetiquettes. Now, a little while back, I did do a review on the 1/10 scale Zinogre diorama, and I was just so utterly impressed by that whole diorama that as soon as I saw that they were releasing a Rathalos version, I just couldn't resist and I just had to pick it up. I couldn't wait to get my hands on this, especially after experiencing the Zinogre diorama and seeing the immense level of detail and the sheer scale of that thing. I just couldn't wait to see what they were going to do with a monster like Rathalos here. And this diorama is actually going to be kind of special compared to that Zinogre one because this diorama has a special feature that that one doesn't. And that special feature is in the lighting effect that Rathalos has here, which I will go into more detail on a little bit later in the video. But yeah, I feel like this is definitely going to be a great companion statue to go along with Rathalos. And of course, this is a very expensive model. This model goes for a little over $1,200 USD, which translates to about $1,600 Canadian dollars. So definitely very pricey statues here, especially to have both Rathalos and Zinogre. So just right out of the box here, this is actually everything that comes included with this. So this is of course the fiery bundle. So here we get, of course, Rathalos here on its amazing stand here with all of these fiery effects. We get a male hunter over here wielding a great sword. We have a female hunter over here wielding a longsword, the most popular weapon in the Monster Hunter series. And we also have a Palico over here. And just like the Electrifying Bundle, we also have two other additional goodies here. And the first one will be this. So yeah, just like I mentioned before in the Zinogre video, this is a little pin which is very reminiscent of the icons, the monster icons from the series. And the interesting one about this is that this Rathalos icon is actually modeled after his Monster Hunter World icon, whereas the Zinogre one was actually Zinogre's original icon. So I think this is actually pretty cool because there's a lot more detail to this version. And again, like, I do think it's kind of cool to have a little pin of this as well. So this will go nicely with the Zinogre one that I got. And of course the final piece is this epic poster right here. So of course both of these bundles come with really cool posters. This one showing Rathalos, the female hunter, the male hunter, and the Palico in an epic duel here with Rathalos. The area completely incinerated and just glowing from those flames there. It's a really cool looking poster here, and I'm definitely gonna frame this on my wall once I get the chance. I also love the perspective here where the camera's kind of like right behind the male hunter here, Rathalos looking kind of towards the viewer. So yeah, this is a great poster. Again, props to the artist here. This is amazing work here. Absolutely love this. So first things first, let's take a look at the Palico statue. So with the Palico statue here, the one design trend that I really like that Kinetiquettes seems to be very consistent of is designing the Palicos in a very silly nature. It's something that I find to be very cute, and it's definitely very on brand for the Palicos since they're always doing silly stuff. They're always kind of getting a little bit messed up in battle. So it's a fun thing to see that represented in statue form here, and I think that Kinetiquettes did a great job conveying that here, especially through the Palico's pose. The Palico looks great, both visually and color-wise here. So as you can see, the Palico is sporting its Rathalos Palico gear here, with these beautiful red scales going down the back of the helmet, completely topped off and lined with these sharp black spikes on the top and the sides of the helmet as well. We also have this very shiny silver faceplate here, which contrasts a lot of the red and black on the rest of the armor, which is nice. I also like this lower armor section here with more of these red scales that kind of cover off the Palico's tail. And I think my favorite part of this Palico statue is definitely this effect part that they added to it. This little effect part of like smoke coming off of the Palico's tail, as if the tail just got singed and he's kind of running away from Rathalos. Again, adding to that whole silly aesthetic of this. That's definitely a very appreciated piece here. I definitely love that that smoke effect that they added here. And the other thing that's kind of cool is that the fur color seems to be a little bit darker on this one, on this Palico. And the fur pattern seems to be very different from the Palico from the Zinogre bundle. So I think that's kind of cool, because it's kind of like a completely different Palico here fighting with these hunters. You can see that we have these little black lines going down the sides of the legs of the Palico, looking slightly different on both legs. And of course, the rest of the armor just looks great with these very shiny silvers contrasting the red scales like I mentioned earlier. And of course, the sculpt is great. I love the way that they designed the face with the closed eyes and the open mouth like that. The Palico running for his life. The paw pads are very nicely detailed right there as well. And just overall, the Palico just looks great, which is what I come to expect from these models here. So, of course, each one of these supporting statues, I guess you could say, come with their own stand as well, which all of these models sort of peg into. So the Palico pegs into this stand right here on this leg, and there is a little bit of movement with the head, mainly because the head does sit kind of loosely in there, so you can see that the head separates and is just on a tiny little peg there, and you can kind of turn it around because it's a very loose fitment in there, so I guess you can kind of use that to kind of adjust the Palico's head in any way that you want. But yeah, that is the Palico statue there. It's looking great, and honestly, I can't say that there's anything that I dislike about it. It's overall really good. So now let's take a look at the male hunter. So the male hunter here just looks absolutely impressive here. I love the fact that it's sporting this Rathalos armor. I've always been a fan of the aesthetic of Rathalos armor in the video games, but seeing it in person here with this level of detail is just, like I said, it's impressive. And yeah, everything here just looks great, especially the pose for the male hunter here. I just love how dynamic this pose is, with his legs like really spaced apart, him winding up like he's going in for a really powerful greatsword hit right there. And the thing that I love about that is how his armor is kind of moving in reaction with that wind up here. You can see the waist armor, how it's kind of bending and curving in reaction to that movement here, which looks really cool, because I love how it spaces out that armor and exposes some of the leg armor here. So you can kind of see that silver armor just here up in the thigh area right here, just underneath the waist armor, that you probably wouldn't really normally see if he was just standing straight, I guess. So that's really cool. And everything else on the body looks great, like the leg armor, even like the shoulder spikes here. The gauntlets look really good, especially with those shiny fingers there as well. And the helmet armor looks great. I definitely think my favorite part on this male hunter is definitely the curved waist armor here. But then, like, taking a look at the greatsword, of course, looks just as impressive. So I like how we have this this bone design at the very tip of the blade here. And this bone is definitely very textured here. I like how we have these different colors. We have these darker spots of the bone as it gets closer to the scales. And then right at the end of the blade is kind of where it's very white. I think that that's actually a very cool detail right there as well. And then, of course, the entirety of this greatsword looks really good. You have a lot of these scales kind of jutting out from the blade, and you can definitely feel it as you run your fingers along it, how they're kind of like sticking out. Definitely a very textured weapon, which is nice, and then it's of course complemented by a lot of these brown and black spikes on the end of the blade here. Definitely don't want to get hit by this thing. And this other spike here on the end. And yeah, when it comes to attaching everything together, for the most part, this hunter, it's basically just the helmet and this part of the greatsword. So the greatsword goes in pretty snug. You do have to play around with it just to get it in just right, but once you do, it's a very tight fit, and you don't have to worry about it moving around or anything like that. It's a very stable pose here. The only fault that I have with the male hunter, and I feel like this applies for both the hunters in this model, is that when comparing the hunters in the Fiery bundle here to the Zinogre bundle, I feel that the faces aren't they're not as impressive in this bundle as they were in the Zinogre one. Like, I feel like the characters in this one, they look a little bit more pale, and they don't seem to be as detailed compared to the hunters in that kit. But in the thing with this one in particular is that it doesn't bother me that much, because at the very least, you don't really notice the faces on these hunters all that much, because a lot of them are very covered up. Some of that by virtue of the Rathalos helmet kind of covering up a lot of their faces, but also their poses. You can see here with the male hunter how he's kind of looking down. The helmet's covering the majority of his face, and on top of that, his arm is blocked. So for you to even really notice those imperfections, you really have to be looking for his face, right? So it's not really something that bothers me that much, because you don't really notice it that much. But yeah, the head just kind of pegs in, just like that. Pretty easily right there. And then if I just bring the face kind of close to the camera there, if it wants to focus, you can kind of see what I mean, how the face doesn't really look all that impressive. You know, it's kind of a blank stare. It's alright, but it definitely doesn't look anywhere near as impressive as the rest of the body. But yeah, overall, I do really like the male hunter here, and again, I think the biggest standout part of this is definitely the pose for sure, and the weapon looks great. Now, on to the female hunter, and now the one thing that I can say right away from looking at the female hunter is that I absolutely love this pose, and I think that's going to be a consistent thing throughout this review, is that I think Kinetiquettes designed some banger poses for this whole bundle here. This just looks really cool. Like, it's almost like the female hunter's kind of going down like a final stand. You know, she's facing off with the monster, and it's just a very good pose for a diorama, especially considering she's going up against Rathalos. She has her longsword, you know, stretched out first and foremost, her staring down her target at the end there. The legs stretched out like that. Everything just looks so good. Like, the angles of everything here, it just looks really nice. I really love how they designed this. And of course, the armor, just like the male armor, just looks really good here. Of course, the female armor is going to look a little bit different. There's going to be a little bit more skin exposed, like the thigh area here, and as well as the arms are a little bit more exposed on the female hunter. The waist armor is not as long as the male armor. You can see it's a bit shorter and not as curvy. There's a little bit of a tail right here, which is kind of an interesting detail here at the back, which does look pretty cool. But you're not going to be seeing that shiny silver armor by the legs that you would on the male hunter. But overall, it does look really cool. I like the spikes by the knee here on the legs, and the chest armor looks great, and of course the helmet armor looks great as well. When it comes to the actual longsword, I love this design. It looks so good. Like, this flamey, fiery aesthetic that we have here, with the reds transitioning into an orange and into a yellow, and this kind of flamey blade here just looks so nice. Now, we of course have these little ribbed sections right in the middle part of the blade here, which look really good. And then, of course, right at the hilt of the blade, we're going to have some of these black spikes kind of encircling the flames here. Overall, this whole thing looks great. I think my favorite weapon out of this whole set is definitely the longsword. I'm not the biggest longsword fan, like, actually using them, but, like, I do recognize when the weapons look cool, and this longsword definitely does look really cool. And it definitely goes well with this whole set together here. So yeah, definitely loving the female hunter. And again, like, if I just remove the head, you can kind of see what I was talking about a little bit earlier with the female hunter. With the face detail, you can kind of see, again, like, the face, there's not really much of an expression going on there. It's kind of like, you know, this is kind of just like another hunt. It's almost like she's taking on her 100th Rathalos, not really that excited. There definitely could have been more of an expression here on the face, but again, you don't really notice it all that much, and to be honest, the face definitely gets outshined by everything else on this model here. So yeah, that's going to be it for the female hunter. Definitely overall a really impressive looking model. So now it's time to take a look at Rathalos, and I gotta say it, Kinetiquettes, they did it again. They completely knocked this model completely out of the park. Everything here is just phenomenal. It's just so impressive the way that they detailed this. And it's something that I came to expect after Zinogre. But the one thing that I wasn't expecting was the sheer scale of Rathalos here. Zinogre was big, Rathalos is significantly bigger. Rathalos' wingspan takes up almost the entirety of this table here. That's insane. It was almost to the point where when I was taking Rathalos out of the box and I was assembling it piece by piece, when I grabbed my first wing, I was dumbfounded. Like, the first thing that came to my mind was like, what the hell? How is it this big? It is just insane. And I kind of wish I could bring my Zinogre down here to kind of do a bit of a size comparison between the two. But these models are pretty heavy. Like, I think Rathalos weighs pretty close to about 30 pounds, and the Zinogre is pretty close there too. It's like around like 20 something. And I think, yeah, Rathalos I think is definitely more heavy than Zinogre is. But I also have Zinogre in a spot that I don't really want to move it from. So yeah, you just gotta kind of take my word for it that yeah, this thing is massive. I'm gonna do a size comparison later on with one of my figure builders models, just to show you how like those don't even compare to this. But yeah, just in terms of the thing that I really like about this as well, on top of the scale, is that Kinetiquettes made sure that not a single inch of this diorama was neglected when it came to visual detail and the colors, because everything on this just looks beautiful. From those crimson scales that go all the way down the back of the body, all the way down to the tail, all of those scales just look so textured. Each scale looks different from each other, and yeah, they just look so real, especially when you see all of the different divots and the different stress marks in between the scales. They just look so cool, especially with those black spikes lining the back of the body all the way down to the tail as well, and even jutting out from the sides. All of those spikes have their own fair amount of divots and undulations and stress marks through them as well. It just looks so good. It just looks so real, as if Rathalos was actually here right in front of me. Like, it's just so cool. And then one of my favorite things about this model, detail-wise, is definitely the facial area. One of the things that I kind of called a very minor flaw with Zinogre was the eyes, because I feel like with Zinogre, the eyes was kind of just very glossy. There wasn't really too much detail there. With Rathalos, that is certainly not the case. The eyes are very well detailed here with Rathalos. You can make out all of the different details in his eyes quite well, even from a fair distance away. You can make out that blue sclera, even that gold iris, even like the pupil directly in the center. You can make all of that out from a fair ways away. That is actually really cool. And even when you look at the mouth area, the mouth is just so well textured as well. Everything inside, like the mouth, the tongue, and everything just looks wet. Like, it almost looks like Rathalos is salivating inside. And like that's just it's just so cool how they managed to pull off that effect there. Like, it's a very glossy effect that they put in there, but it just works so well. Everything inside the mouth looks so great. It looks very real, and even the teeth as well. When you see those different color gradients of the teeth, like when the tooth is kind of getting close to the gum, or I guess like the roof of the mouth, you have those gradients from like the brighter bony color from the very tip of the teeth going into a bit of a darker color as it gets closer to the mouth. Everything in the mouth just looks so impressive, especially those flame effect parts that kind of hang out of the side of his mouth as well. Everything there looks so good. The other thing that I really like about this thing visually is the base. And this is something that's definitely in direct contrast to Zinogre, because Zinogre had its fair amount of effect parts as well with those lightning effect parts, but they definitely weren't as pronounced as they are here with Rathalos' flame effect parts. And they definitely did that for a reason, and that's because the base has a really large lighting panel, LED panel in the base here, which is of course used to give off that lighting effect for the flames. So of course they want it to be very large and make it look very spectacular. But again, it does add a lot of character to this base and to Rathalos himself as well. So I think that that is really cool. And I'll definitely show the lighting effect very soon. I think the only thing that I think is kind of weird with this Rathalos model is the tail. The barb at the very end of the tail just looks a little bit weird to me because like it's like a bright red color and it's very long. From what I remember, Rathalos is, like, that barb is usually supposed to be black. It's usually, like, a darker color, and I don't remember it being that long. So, it does kind of look a little weird to me. That's really the only thing there that I can really say is kind of a little off-putting. It doesn't necessarily look bad, but it's just different, really. But outside of that, like, everything about this is just fantastic. And, yeah, like, even when we take a look at this, so much like with Zinogre, all of these parts are magnetic. So you can see right here, I can actually pull out one of the legs and you can kind of get a close examination on Rathalos's talons here. So you can just see, just with the scales on Rathalos's leg here, you can just see the level of detail again here with all of those scales looking very textured here, and those beautiful reds going all the way down the scales. And then, of course, completely contrasted with this kind of, with this skin here. A variety of different color gradients going all the way down here. More scales coming closer to the talons. And then you can see that these talons are very sharp as well, and very textured as well. You can see a bunch of divots in the claws here. And they just feel very sharp. Like, you look at them and they look very imposing. So I think that that's very cool. But again, just like with Zinogre, these are all fit in by magnets as well, and some very strong magnets. So you can see, like, right as I put this in, this thing just wants to jump right out of my hand. It just sits in very easily, and it holds its pose very easily just like that as well. So everything is really good here, and I'm just going to try to do a quick pan right here. So you can kind of see, like, it's going to be kind of difficult to kind of move things around a bit, but you can just see just how massive these wings are just as I pan around it. These things are absolutely huge. And then you can kind of see the texture. Even the texture in the wings looks so impressive. From the little design, the design inside the membrane of the wings with those black lines look very good, as well as the different segments in between the wings as well. All of the scales are very pronounced on each different section of the wing, as well as those black spikes on the very end of the wing tips, and on these parts of the wings right here with all of these black spikes in different sizes here. Looking very good. Every single one of these pieces just looks so impressive, as well as the spikes on the sides of the tail as well for Rathalos. Everything here just looks so good. So yeah, I think right here I'm gonna plug this thing in and then display the lighting effect here for Rathalos, and then just give you guys a picture of what this thing looks like in the darkness. So, I finally got the lighting effect going, and you can see that this is just an impressive display here. The lighting effect here is just so bright, and it's just so beautiful. It definitely adds a lot more to the character of this whole diorama, and it just adds such an ominous mood to this action scene. Of course, we don't have the other hunters attached to the diorama just yet, but even just looking at Rathalos here, just by himself, with the flames reflecting off of his body, it just looks so intimidating and so imposing. This pose is also very brilliant because of the way his wings are completely outstretched, since the lights emanating from the base and the flames reflects off of the wings, so that even in the dark, you're going to be seeing all of the detail on those wings, even in complete darkness. And it also adds that aforementioned ominous mood to the whole scene as well, right? And even with the way that it's posed as well, where Rathalos' talons and his face, and even the effect parts around his face, those are the things that are front and center and directly being illuminated. It's almost as if all of the fearsome things that you know about Rathalos is being presented directly to you, and it's like, you don't want to mess with this thing. I just love how that is accentuated by the lighting effects here. That is just so cool. And yeah, These flames just look so beautiful. So this whole setup, this base doesn't actually have a battery, so in order for you to achieve this lighting effect, you do have to have it plugged in. There is an on and off button on the back, but yeah, there's no way you can just plug it in, charge it, and just turn it on later. You have to have it plugged in. So I think I'm going to have to get a long USB cable for this, for where I'm going to be putting it. But yeah, it just looks great, and you can just see how pronounced these flames are, even in this well-lit area. It's still very noticeable, even with that orange glow on the rest of his body. So without any further ado, I'm actually going to turn off the lights and show you guys what this is like in complete darkness. Okay, so all the lights are off right here, and again, you can just see how bright this is. My camera doesn't really do the best with low light recording, but even then, this still looks really good. You can just feel that atmosphere that's being conveyed here with Rathalos. It just looks so intimidating when you just see Rathalos' face just front and center, just looking towards you. The rest of his body is kind of obscured by darkness, but everything here, its wings, it's like it's coming straight at you. It just looks so cool. The other thing too is that these lights are so powerful that it actually completely illuminates this room, like, pretty well. The camera doesn't really do the nicest job of picking it up. Like, maybe if I pan over here, yeah, you can kind of see it a bit there. But yeah, like, this definitely works pretty well as a nightlight. You can definitely use it as a nightlight, which I think is actually pretty cool. It does a really good job of lighting up the room, and yeah, it can definitely be used for that purpose, especially if you want some moody lights with your horrific Rathalos here. But yeah, this is beautiful. This is absolutely fantastic, and I definitely want to see this set up with the rest of the models and show you guys what this looks like with the whole scene completed together. So here we have all of the models here together, and already, without them even being connected to the diorama, this already looks really cool with everything all spaced out. But here I'm just going to show you guys how everything comes together, and it's actually pretty easy. So basically there's an order of things here. So basically the male hunter is supposed to be in the middle, the female hunter is supposed to be on the right, and the Palico is supposed to be on the left. And I honestly kind of like how all of this comes together a little bit better than with Zinogre. And yeah, this is basically how it goes. So you just have to fit the rock base right into these different spots. It kind of looks weird because you don't necessarily see the indentation on the supporting statues' rocks, but it kind of makes sense when you kind of move them in. So this one should fit in like this. Yeah. So yeah, the male hunter sits in the middle. You can kind of see it sits just underneath those little 3 jutting rocks right there out of Rathalos' base. And this one kind of connects to it a little bit. I think you can make it fit a little bit more seamless, but I'm just doing it real quick right now. And then for the Palico, if I just kind of just pan this over right here, the Palico just kind of slips in right there. Right there. And yeah, this is basically how the whole thing is set up. And again, like, I do believe you can make this a little bit more seamless. You can I'm pretty sure you can get rid of these gaps if you just fit it in completely nicely. Again, I just did this really quick. And the base that they use, like, they do have this kind of sticky material, so it's a little bit hard to kind of move it at times, but it does look really good once you get it in completely like that. And it's such an easy and quick setup. You can take it out and put them in whenever you want with ease, and it just looks great. Again, the reason why I like this a little bit more than the Zinogre, at the very least just putting the diorama together, is just because of the ease of use here. With the Zinogre, everything kind of pegged into Zinogre's, either into Zinogre's body or into Zinogre's base. Whereas, like, that kind of made things, like, those spots were kind of tough. You kind of did have to play around with the pegs to get them in just right. Here, it's just easy. Just put the rocks in, and then you're good to go. But this whole setup just looks great. You can just see all of these hunters, the male hunter, the female hunter. They're ready. they're trying to take on this Rathalos. Rathalos is spitting fire at them, and of course the Palico over there is just getting his tail burnt. But yeah, this whole setup just looks good, and of course with the fire effect on, with the LEDs on, this just looks beautiful. So I'm just gonna decrease the lighting a little bit. I'll probably just dim the lights and then show everything in complete darkness a little bit afterwards, and just show how the whole thing is completely illuminated right now. And then I guess after that I'll just give my final thoughts. So I'm just gonna dim the lights right now. So yeah, you can see right here, just with the dimmer lights, again, this looks good. And the thing that I really love too is seeing those flames, the light from those flames reflecting off of the hunter's armor. And I think that's also the thing that's really cool about the silver parts, because yeah, that silver is going to be reflecting a lot of that orange light too, and just giving more of a sense of depth when it comes to the flames. I think that that's actually a really neat detail that they have there, because like you're not going to be seeing that much with the red scales. On that silver, 100%, and you see it so much on the Palico as well there, all of that flame being reflected off of the back of his armor. So that is honestly really cool. So I'm gonna turn the lights completely off now, and there we go. This looks so cool. All of the hunters almost look just like silhouettes. You can definitely clearly make out their weapons, but it's just so cool how they just look like silhouettes coming up against Rathalos here. The Palico is still very distinguishable over there, with a lot of that light being reflected off of the silver armor. But yeah, it's just kind of cool seeing the hunters here completely in the darkness, with Rathalos completely dwarfing them in size. This is just such a beautiful display, and this whole diorama just works so well. Yeah, this is great. Like, I think Kinetiquettes did an amazing job with this whole setup, and yeah, I just love this. So that's going to conclude this review of the 1/10 scale Rathalos diorama from Kinetiquettes. If I were to go on to my final thoughts, again, you guys already know how I'm feeling about this. This is easily one of my favorite Monster Hunter collectibles of all time. It doesn't quite pass Zinogre, because Zinogre is still my favorite monster in the series, so I can't put this over Zinogre, but this is definitely a very close second for a lot of reasons. The scale being insane, of course the level of detail is just phenomenal. The thing that I love about this is the lighting effect. I feel like whenever it comes to statues like this, any dioramas like this, of this size, with this level of detail, I feel that LEDs, lighting effects are, I feel like it's a must, right? It's one of those things that just adds that extra level of detail to the whole thing, and it just kind of creates an atmosphere. You know, it's one of those things where, like, I have a First for Figures Shiranui statue in my room, and it's just cool seeing the flames from the solar reflector light up, and seeing those flickering effects. Like, it just adds such a nice mood to your room. Like, even if you're just using it as a nightlight, it's just really cool. And then seeing that here with Rathalos, I absolutely love this. It would have been cool if they did something like this with Zinogre, if they had some LED lights for the lightning effects. But, you know, it is what it is. This was definitely a very welcome feature for this, and everything looks great. Like the additional hunters, the Palico, everything here was just done so well. Again, I loved the poses. Like, I think the poses were definitely one of the best things out of this, because again, the way that the male hunters posed, where he's winding up, his body is completely contorted, he's getting ready to swing out that greatsword. Such a cool looking pose, as well as the female hunter with her extending out the longsword like that in almost like a final stand against Rathalos. All of these poses were done so well. Even the Palico. I also like how when you connect the Palico's base towards towards Rathalos's, how the smoke effect part actually makes direct contact with the flames where the Palico is. So like, I think that that's actually pretty cool. It adds a little bit more to that effect part there as well. Yeah, there isn't really too many bad things that I can say about this. Like, I guess if I were to just nitpick, the only things that I think could be a little bit better would have been the face detail of the male hunter and the female hunter. They could have made them a little bit more expressive. Like, I think their blank, almost like just dead, empty faces is kind of weird, but it is kind of a thing where you don't really notice their faces, especially when you have them set up in the diorama. They're all facing towards Rathalos, so when you have this set up, you're not going to be looking at their faces, so it's not like a big deal in that regard. But outside of that, I do think that Rathalos' tail, well, the barb at the very end of his tail does look kind of weird. Again, I mentioned this before, but I do think it's kind of weird how they designed it to be like a bright red and make it really long. Because again, I don't think it's ever been portrayed like that in any of the video games. I think that barb has always been black. So it's just kind of weird how it looked. Even when I took it out of the packaging, I was looking at this and I couldn't even recognize what it was. And then when I figured out that it was supposed to be the barb at the end of the tail, I'm like, oh, that's different. But yeah, and I guess one issue which I didn't bring up earlier in the video, one of the effect parts that attaches onto Rathalos' mouth, the one on the right side, I don't know if this is just something specific to my model or if like anybody else that has this Rathalos has had the same problem, but that effect part the peg is actually very loose. So it's very easy for that thing to fall out if you just kind of bump into Rathalos, or even if you move Rathalos around a little bit. That effect part has fallen out a couple times. Again, it's more of a nitpick than anything, because as long as you don't touch the statue, which there's not really any reason for you to, as long as you don't touch it, it's not going to fall out. But yeah, it is something that that is very loose in there, and I suppose one extra thing I think they could have done is they probably could have added like a flickering effect to the flames to kind of give it a more like animated effect there, as well, as opposed to it just being on. I think like a flickering effect would have been cool, but like for the most part, those are all just kind of nitpicks. They're nothing major or anything that really detracts away from this statue. Like everything else is basically perfection. The colors on all of the armor pieces, on all of the scales of Rathalos' body, all of the details when it comes to all of the divots, all of the undulations throughout like the different scales and spikes on his body, the stress marks, all of the spikes, there's just so much detail in them, so much depth to them as well. One of the things that I didn't bring up either was the tail. I was actually very impressed with how the tail looked for Rathalos, because there was so much depth, especially towards the back, where you could see so many like layers of spikes and scales that you normally wouldn't see on any other Rathalos model that you'd pick up, right? So there's like so many cool things with that. And again, the face is bar none, it is just perfection. The way that they detailed the eyes, the mouth, the teeth, all of that stuff around the head is just perfect with Rathalos. So again, I gotta say, like, this is amazing. Shoutouts to Kinetiquettes for designing such an amazing diorama. And on top of that, the other goodies as well. The artist who did the poster, that looks amazing. I absolutely love that. And yeah, everything here is just great. I'm so happy to have an amazing Zinogre and an amazing Rathalos. Rathalos isn't necessarily one of my favorite monsters in the series, but, you know, he is the icon of Monster Hunter. So it is kind of cool to have such what I would consider a definitive model of such an iconic monster to one of my favorite games series of all time. So yeah, that's going to bring this review to a close. Again, I hope you enjoyed it. I hope you found it informative. There's definitely going to be a lot more Monster Hunter stuff coming in the future, so I hope you stay tuned for that. But until then, take care, and I will see you all later.